video of about 7 minutes by Bosse Dort, a representative from the European Union. So I will proceed to share her video.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Dörte Bosse. I'm the team leader for social protection, persons with disabilities and horizontal matters here in G4 of INPA European Commission at headquarters. I'd like to warmly welcome you to this seminar here concentrating on the improving synergies between social protection and public finance management, special focus on PFM. So this training has been put together with our implementing partners, ILO, UNICEF, and the Global Coalition for Social Protection Floors. So we are here today. The focus of this training is to teach you the essential concepts required for understanding the different financing options for social protection and how to improve public finance management, PFM, both of which are essential for the implementation of this action. The synergies between social protection and PFM are important because how governments manage public finances and the choices they make directly affects how much public finance is made available to invest in national socio-economic development with social protection and jobs. This training will help you to support partner countries to explore further domestic financing options which sustainably extend social protection. As a quick reminder, the overall action of improving synergies between social protection and public finance management is to increase partner countries' universal social protection coverage through improved policy coherence and the design, financing, implementation and monitoring of social protection systems. Thus, in a nutshell, three main objectives. First is the financing of social protection systems. Second is implementation and monitoring these social protection systems. And third is building shock responsive social protection programs. Apart from the three main objectives of this program, we implement this through two main approaches. The first approach is long-term support to partner countries, actually to bring together the social protection system building on one side and the PFM component. The second approach under this program is a short-term advice on demand as countries come in, as partner countries come in, plus the elaboration of kind of overarching products based on the lessons learned from our partner countries to help them and to attract more partner countries who wish to work with us on social protection system building plus PFM. So what is important to know for you as well, of course, we are midway through, even if it feels like the program has started yesterday. So there was COVID-19. As we all know, this had a tremendous impact as well on the design and implementation of this program. So we needed to adapt our long-term support on one side and the short-term ad hoc support as well. Overall, right now, we are supporting 18 partner countries as well in adapting to COVID-19, additional to what we are doing anyway, so social protection and PFM system building, and there are good results already being achieved. So we kind of course, we had the first annual report, which said very good advancement of this overall program, but stronger focus on linking to PFM is needed. And right now we have the midterm evaluation. We just started right now and results will be out next summer. What could be done as well as a focus on COVID-19, where social protection was much requested? So we could help, just in a nutshell again, help partner countries to consolidate their fiscal space as an example, to kind of make sure or improve that sustainable financing for social protection in the aftermath of COVID-19 is available. We could further improve the effectiveness, efficiency of social protection spending. We could as well help partner countries or support them in a better coordination and information sharing between the line ministries, normally being in charge of social protection, and Ministry of Finance, because we bring in the PFM component. And this is really innovative about this program. We could open this discussion and the budgeting as well, you know, or the whole PFM discussion on social protection. We could share this with civil society parties, representatives and trade unions. This is really innovative, I would say. Now, so for the future, this is why I'm here today as well, apart from further improving your knowledge on bringing together social protection and PFM. So we need to focus stronger, and I mentioned this already as an outcome of the first annual report of what we have seen. Even stronger focus is linked between social protection and PFM. We had a very good start so far, but further to be strengthened. We have seen as well after post, it's the outcome of the post, if you can already say so, or the ongoing pandemic, there are new challenges, and we all know this. All of us working with social protection, we need to have better answers how to cover people working in the informal sector. We need to have better answers when it comes to shock responsiveness and so on. This goes, of course, a better response to social protection, but the strongly linked to the PFM, and this is extremely important. So this seminar here today on the next days, I understand is kind of a recurrent as well. We want to lead by example here. We want to bring user knowledge as well together with the partners, how to better link social protection and PFM. And we want to lead by example as well, perhaps for the other social sectors, how to link social sectors with PFM, to kind of go beyond to discuss always with the usual suspects. So with our peers, we need to bring in the people who know about money. So let's see as well how we can bring in more partner countries to attract with this very innovative approach other partner countries. And I'm very happy that there are so many. And last but not least, I'd like to thank for the full support of our partners here, ILO, UNICEF, and the Global Coalition for Social Protection Floors, and my colleagues as well, Noemi, Le Breton Pissol, and other colleagues from INPA who will participate in this training as well to give you further information on what we're doing, especially on budget support as well and PFM. I'd like to conclude here, and I wish you a lot of success. Thank you very much.
So we thank Dorte for her kind words on introducing this session, and now we present Celine Peyron-Vista, the Chief Technical Officer of the EU-funded Social Protection and Public Finance Management Program, and she will present the session today. Welcome, Celine. I will open her presentation.
Thank you very much, Alvaro, and thank you very much for being here again this afternoon or this morning with us for those in Latin America. It's great to see that after the first session on Monday, we didn't lose half of the participants, which would have been for us a sign that we were probably not reaching our objective. We will try to make this session a bit more interactive. We won't have a group exercise as we did on Monday, but we have the pleasure to have with us for this afternoon session our colleague Andres from the PFAX unit of the Social Protection Department in Geneva, who will then, after me, present one specific tool that we wanted to share with you during this session. As Dorte insisted in her introductory remark, and also as it was recalled by Valerie, it's very important that, next slide, Alvaro, that when we support governments in designing social protection policy, And in our case, sustainable social protection, it's also important, it's very important to base those decisions on evidence and data. And the tool that we're going to present this afternoon are these tools that can be used to gather, collect this information and data that will be very necessary to design the policy reform. And here on this slide, you can see the process, the different steps, 6 of them, to accompany the government and the national dialogue to develop those evidence and data. And the first question that comes is, or the first step of this process is really to map the existing social protection schemes and programs, to be able to come with an overall mapping, an overall status of the social protection system in the country. And this inventory or stock taking of existing social protection schemes and programs is extremely important to start the process. And it's not necessarily, or I may even say based on experiences we had in few countries, that can lead to a very long discussion to define the scope of social protection. This comes from the fact that we want this process to be as inclusive as possible, working with all different ministries, not only the traditional ministries in charge of social protection, labor and social affairs, but also including in this dialogue ministries of education, ministries of agriculture even, and the Ministry of Finance as a key partner for this review and this process. And it may come in the discussion that each ministry is really trying to push for their own program to appear in this inventory, also to get visibility on the work they're doing. One thing is to guide the discussion to really narrow the focus and the scope of social protection. The other important fact in narrowing the scope of social protection, because we've seen it in other countries, for example, in Senegal, and I have my colleagues here from Senegal also in this course, that when we conducted this exercise 2-3 years ago, the first reaction from the different stakeholders was to ask to have all kind of program included under social protection, with the intention to show that social protection was an important sector for the country, for the budget of the state as well. One challenge in inflating the definition of social protection by including, for example, a lot of the active labor market policy, public work program, as well as the humanitarian response. We also discussed whether we should include infrastructure development in this definition of social protection. Then the other side of the coin is you will also inflate your budget for social protection. And if this exercise is to advocate for further financing for social protection, if you arrive with a review of the system that shows you already have quite substantial spending on social protection, your Ministry of Finance may just reply that, okay, I mean, you already have 10% of GDP, for instance, on social protection. I don't see why we need to invest more. So this definition of the scope of social protection is really important and need to be placed again in the overall advocacy effort that we're doing to mobilize more domestic resources for social protection. Once you have this inventory, and I will show you a tool that can help to map the different social protection schemes and programs, it's quite easy to fill in the information regarding the data and statistics of each of these schemes and programs. And here I will show you what kind of data can be collected to document the state of development and performance of the scheme. So this is the first step. Once you have a good overview and you see more or less which part of the population is covered, also by looking at the legal and institutional framework for each of the scheme, we can more easily identify the gaps in terms of coverage, which population is still not yet covered, but also the gaps in terms of adequacy of benefits. Is the level of benefits sufficient to keep people, beneficiaries, out of poverty when they receive the social protection support? We can compare this level to different indicators, and we will talk about it, and Andres will also mention it in the tool that we will present. So once we have identified those gaps, we can also easily identify or estimate the cost to fill in these gaps. And this is the third step that we usually do. And this is not particularly a methodology that ILO UNICEF have developed. This is very common sense on how do we support policy making through evidence. The next question is, once we have decided on where we have gaps and decided on what should be the priority to filling these gaps, the next question is how much this will cost to fill in the gap. And this is where we have this costing or simulation of the cost exercise, where we Andres will present one of our tools to that we can use to cost and estimate the cost of these gaps to reach the social protection system that is defined either in the national policy or as a social protection tool or as the ambition of the country. And this tool that Andres will present also allows for projection of the financing needs. And this is the first block of analysis that is required to guide the social protection policy development. And then once we have this costing, we enter into discussion on how much how we're going to finance this recommendation, the social protection floor or the national social protection policy, and also what will be the impact of each of these new programs or improved program impact on poverty, for instance. That is often a question that is asked by the Ministry of Finance. If I invest that much, what will be the impact on poverty reduction? And based on all this information, you really refine the policy recommendation to build what will be the definition of the ideal social protection system for a specific country, or how do we achieve the social protection floor, how do filling all the gaps. So this is a process that is, I'm sure, nothing new to any of you, because as I said, it's quite common sense. It's not a specific methodology that we are developing through this program that we're implementing together, but it helps, I think, to picture a little bit the different sequence and the type of evidence that can be brought to support the development of social protection policy. Next slide, Alvaro, please. Just to, next slide, yeah, just for you to understand, this afternoon, we're going to talk mainly with Andres about the first 3 steps of this process. How do we conduct an inventory, and what can be the tool for that inventory? How do we also reach some consensus on recommendation and priorities to extend social protection? And Andres will present to us one of the tools to help the costing, to estimate the cost to filling the social protection gap. Next slide. I started a little bit introducing this idea of how do we accompany or do we support such a process? And I think as importantly as gathering information and statistics and data is really to base this process on the dialogue. And that is extremely important. On the national dialogue, to expand to more partners, to all stakeholders, also to civil society, to all different ministries, And for this, really the next step of such a process is to set up or reinforce a national group on social protection that will be able to coordinate the different ministries and government institutions involved in the sector of social protection. And that is something I would really like to emphasize. What we're trying to do through this process is not to call upon expertise of an international consultant that may come 1 or 2 weeks in a country, gather information with support of national consultant of the national institution, then go back to his or her country, prepare a report, then that will be sent to the government for endorsement. Now, in this process, what is important is really this national dialogue and reaching a consensus on what is the definition of social protection and how do we want to achieve the ambition of universal social protection. And this is important to take into consideration because in this case, such a process cannot be done in 3 or 4 months. It will require, in most of the countries where we accompany such process, it takes about 1.5 or 2 years. Because as insisted already, what is important is to get a buy-in of the policy recommendation, the conclusion of this process. If we want to ensure implementation, we need to have the largest buy-in possible in the country with all the different technical ministries, social security institution, but also the partners like civil society, employers, workers, representative, and as importantly, from the beginning to involve the Ministry of Finance or Ministry of Planning to make sure that those recommendations will actually be implemented. And to have this efficient national dialogue, we also need to invest in building the capacity. Building the capacity is very important to make sure that first the decision taken by the different stakeholders are informed decisions with a common understanding of social protection, the international principles on social protection, the UN instrument, a good understanding of the UN instrument when it comes to promoting social protection, the ILO convention and recommendation that also serve as international guidance to shape the social protection system, as well as other UN agencies having their own instrument and framework to promote, like UNICEF having the social protection framework to promote social protection. It's important to invest some time in building the capacity so the stakeholders have a common understanding and what they want to achieve with the implementation, the adoption of a social protection system. Next slide, Alvaro, please. Yeah. We have a number of tools, very practical tools that we will present this afternoon to support such a process and that can be used also in your country. I will focus, so you have in this red box a long list of tools, which is not exhaustive because as we prepare the slides, those are mainly the ISPA tools and the ILO tools, but UNICEF was also part of this training as also its own tool that they will present next week on cost effectiveness and other instruments that they have. And the Global Coalition also has very interesting tool to engage the civil society into this national dialogue. Next slide, Alvaro, please. This afternoon, we're going to look at 3 tools in particular, which we thought because some of you have already used it and are in the process of using it and going this long 1 year, 1.5 year, 2 years process is ongoing in a number of countries of the program, but we wanted to share your experience with the other countries as well. The first tool that we are looking at is the Social Security Inquiry, and this is a tool that we can use to map the social security system or the social protection schemes and programs that compose the system in a country. The second one that we will look at today is the SPOT, the Social Protection Policy Option Tool. which is one of these ISPA tools that I will also mention, that I will also expand a little bit more in my presentation. And the last tool is a rapid assessment protocol that Andres will present and use with you at the end of this presentation. Next slide, please. So for the Social Security inquiry, this is a large matrix that map all the social protection program and schemes in a country. It looks both at the contributory and the non-contributory aspect of social protection, which is also an indicator that we collect when we do this mapping. So basically it means that you will collect information on programs such as social assistance, safety nets. It can also collect information on public work programs, school feeding program, a large range of different programs that enter under the social protection definition. It will also put in the same matrix, include in the same matrix, the social insurance benefits that are available in the country. Looking at the pension benefits, the contributory pension benefits, employee provident fund for pension, looking also at the working injury insurance provision, maternity leave, sickness leave, and unemployment insurance if it exists in a country. So you will list all the different programs that enter into the definition of social protection. Here I would like to stop just for a few seconds and clarify a point that I think is important. The Social Security inquiry is the tool that was recognized internationally to report on the SDG indicator 1.3.1, which is the SDG target for achieving social protection for all by 2030. So we're using this tool, the Social Security Inquiry, to report on the SDG 1.3 targets. When we report to the SDG 1.3 for international comparison and to be able to aggregate figure at regional level, global level, we're using as a framework to define the scope of social protection. We're referring to the ILO Convention on Social Protection. So mainly the ILO Convention on Minimum Standard of Social Security, the 102, as well as the ILO Recommendation on Social Protection Flow. And those are the definition, the scope that was agreed to report on the SDG indicator 131. At the national level, when you conduct such an exercise as the social protection policy design, you can adjust the scope and the definition of the social protection in your country. What is advisable is to refer to the national social protection policy or strategy, if it exists in your country, and to list the programs that are included under this national social protection policy or strategy as a starting point. To help guiding the dialogue. And here we have our colleagues from Senegal who maybe will be happy also to share their experience and the number of workshop and discussion we had to define which program should be included in this inventory. Once you have the list of inventory, the list of programs, it comes quite smoothly to continue filling the information required in this matrix. As I mentioned, one indicator is whether the scheme is contributory based on social security contribution or non-contributory funded by the tax and the budget and the state budget. The next information you will collect is on the coverage data, the coverage rate. How many contributors do you have if you're looking at a contributory scheme? This is why you have this black box in the middle of the matrix, because for non-contributory, you won't have any information for these columns. And then you also look in terms of coverage at the number of beneficiaries for a specific year for each of the schemes and programs. And you also define what is the legal anchorage of this program. And this is an important variable to enter in your review. It's important to assess whether the program is anchored in the law or policy, or whether it's an ad hoc program that is being implemented if funds are available, or a program supported by an international partner and with some risk in terms of continuity of the program. This is an important indicator because we will promote the anchorage of this program in a law to ensure continuity and sustainability also of financing of those programs. Next slide, please, Alvaro. Yeah, the next slide is the next row, the next columns will enter information on level of benefits. As I mentioned earlier, it could be that you have a very good system on the paper, you cover a quite large range of the population, but then unfortunately the benefits are relatively low, or at least not at a level adequate to keep people out of poverty when the event occurs. And this is where it's important to assess whether the level of benefit is sufficient enough to fulfill the function of social protection. And this is the information you will report in this table. And the last set of information you will enter is the program's revenues and expenditure, program by program, which may not be perfect to assess the social protection expenditure, but it gives you already an indicator that then you can compare with the national budget to see whether you have coherence in this data collection you've been conducting, or if there's a complete incoherence between the national budget and the information that has been covered through this exercise. Again, it's very important that for the Social Security inquiry, it goes through, or it's supported by a national dialogue. You really need to have on the different stakeholders, and in particular the ministries in charge of implementing each program, to be part of this discussion and to validate the data that has been collected by the consultant. This is very important, I mean, for one reason, because for reporting on the SDG 131, it's really based on the validation of this data by the national counterparts, and also to make sure that all programs have been correctly listed and the information is accurately reported. If you want to, because it's advisable or recommendable to continue using on a regular basis this matrix to then evaluate and measure the progress in extending the coverage of social protection, and to have comparable data year after year, you need also this validation to take place. Next slide. The second tool that we wanted to present this afternoon is the assessment-based national dialogue, and the social protection policy option tools. As it says by its title, and you see how important is a national dialogue, this tool is a national dialogue that you will inform through an assessment of social protection. And it's not a social protection that is supported by a national dialogue, but it's really putting the emphasis on this national dialogue. The difference between the assessment-based national dialogue, the ABND, and the SPOT, both tools have been developed and used by the UN agencies. The assessment-based national dialogue is a bit like the first generation of this kind of diagnostic that was undertaken at the country level when the Social Protection Flow Initiative was launched by the UN. This was the tool that was used at the level of the UN country team to put together all the different government institutions, but as well as the UN agencies. And in many in many experiences, also the World Bank and the regional bank participating in this discussion to have a very strong consensus on what will be the definition of a social protection floor in the country and how much it will cost to establish this social protection floor. As the tool, the ABND, evolved and more discussion taking place and also other fora for development partner to discuss, the discussion led to the development of a new tool, the SPOT, the Social Protection Policy Option Tool, the SPOT, which became a ISPA tool. And I will show you in the next two slides what do we mean by ISPA. ISPA is an international tool that has been developed by many other development partners. About 20 partners are part of this ISPA group, and has a bit deepened the methodology of the ABND. One main difference between the ABND and the SPOT is really the emphasis put on the institutional review or the evaluation of the institutional capacity to implement the social protection system. And this is very important and extremely needed to improve coordination and coherence of the social protection programs to build into a social protection system. So the SPOT, maybe as a difference from the ABND, has some questionnaires, guidelines that can also help assessing the institutional capacity. And this is from institutional capacity. This is from looking at the coordination body, overall coordination body of the social protection sector, the one taking the policy decision, as well as the coordination at the level of delivery. How do we coordinate through, for example, the National Social Registry as a database or system to monitor on the social protection beneficiaries? Through the ABND or the SPOT, you will look at different aspects, different level of assessments. As I mentioned, a quantitative assessment through the Social Security Inquiry, but also a qualitative assessment, the quality of, the quality and the performance of the legal and institutional framework that is very important to include in this analysis. Then, once you have reached through this process of national dialogue a consensus on the priorities and recommendation, there's an interesting exercise that involves a technical group among the different key ministries and the different development partners to turn those recommendations into scenarios. And this is these scenarios that you will be able to input into the rapid assessment protocol for costing of the social protection gap. If I give you an example, a recommendation could be to extend child grants or to introduce a universal child grant in the country because there's no social protection for children. There's no this specific benefit for children. This is a recommendation. A scenario will be to decide what we mean by universal social protection as universal child grant. Are we covering all children during the first 1,000 days? Are we covering all children during of the age group 0 to 4 or 0 to 16, for example, like it's the case in Mongolia? So really transforming, converting your recommendation into a scenario is looking at introducing some parameters that are again agreeable on a policy basis among the different stakeholders. Also discussing on what will be the level of the child benefits. Will it be equivalent to the poverty line? Will it be equivalent to the 20% of GDP per capita? Will it be equivalent to the social insurance child benefit if it exists? This is the discussion that will take place to really define the parameters of your scenario. And when you have defined the different scenario, high scenario, low scenario, middle scenario, you will input this information into the costing tool that Andres will present. What is also important along all this process of ABND and SPOT is to constantly build the case for social protection. You need to convince the Ministry of Finance why is it important to invest in social protection. And this is where a Ministry of Finance or stakeholders can ask you to bring some evidence on the return on investment in social protection, or many different other analytical work to really build this evidence. And one of them is, for example, the poverty impact assessment that our colleague Helmut will present also later during this course. And this case for social protection needs to be discussed, obviously, with Ministry of Finance, but it's important to also engage with the international financing institution to make sure that there's a common understanding of the objective of universal social protection and how we're going to progressively achieve this objective. And as part of the discussion also, it will be necessary to link the social protection with the overall macroeconomic framework, looking at how social protection also links with employment policy, poverty reduction policy, formalization, and we will discuss further on when we will discuss about financing, how placing social protection in this broader macroeconomic framework is extremely important to build the case for social protection. Next slide. I mentioned the ISPA tool. This is maybe something you've heard, or maybe it's the first time you're hearing about this ISPA tool. So ISPA is the social protection agency tools. Yeah, so I will bring you in the chat the definition for ISPA. We've been so used to say ISPA that I even forgot what ISPA means. Yeah. It's the group of 20 partners, part of this ISPA group, are developing together some common tools that can be used to help countries to improve their social protection system by providing a more coherent framework, more coordinated also framework through the support of the developing partner. Yeah, thanks, Aristide. Interagency social protection assessment tools. Yeah. And to bring more coordination, more coherence among the development partner, that will definitely help also the different government institutions to coordinate better. The ISPA tool are also very helpful to identify the policy option based on a sound diagnostic and assessment of the situation, and also are used to help improving this coordination across the different government institutions through for example, the national dialogue that is at the core of the SPOT tool as an example. As I already mentioned, we have this tool, but then the very big advantage is that they are flexible. They can be adapted to the national situation and to the national context. What is also important to keep in mind that this tool really offer some kind of solid ground when a government requests one of the UN agency to help them with a diagnostic. If you say, sure, I mean, we can do it using the ISPA tool and bringing together the different development partners. So it really adds some more added value, comparative advantage when you work with with a government that feel that there's a strong international backup on those tools. It looks at 3 levels of assessment. One is assessing the system, and here we have 3 tools. 2 are already developed and existing. The CODI, which is the core diagnostic instrument, which is an inventory, but a lot more comprehensive than the one I present in the Social Security Inquiry. And in the session brief that Alvaro shared with you, it puts the link to see to access all the questionnaires of the CODI exercise. I mean, the CODI exercise is a very, very comprehensive and complete diagnostic of the social protection system. You can use either the full CODI questionnaire, or you can pick in this list the questionnaire that you need, the question even that you need to conduct your own national dialogue. The spot, which is not yet highlighted on the slide, but that is almost finalized and will be soon put online, that have been used in a number of countries already. Also, the social protection financing, this is an interesting one and important as well in light of all the discussion on financing for SDGs, financing for development. The ISPA group will develop its own a tool to guide the discussion and how to identify options for financing social protection. And this is a tool that will become available, we hope, in 2022, also based on the experience of your country working and assessing financing options for social protection through this program. The second set of tools is looking more at the program implementation and program design. So you see you have a long list of tools in the pipeline, and so far those that are already available online are some guidelines to develop food security and nutrition program or public work program. And other partners are working on these different tools as well. And what is also interesting is the partners are together to establish some tools looking at the delivery of this program and schemes. And here two tools that already exist on the platform, and the one to develop some ID system related to the information system of social protection. How do we develop an effective ID system through the national registry or other information system that can be available to better deliver and monitor social protection. And the other tool in delivery is also on social protection payment, the payment of benefits. What are the good lessons learned, that the good practices have been brought into this social protection payment tool. So this, we will share more links to all these resources, and this is partly in the next slide and in the session brief. And the third tool that we wanted to present today is the tool for costing. I don't know, Alvaro, if you may allow, we can already stop maybe a few minutes for question and answer, if participants would like already to react on this first part of the presentation, or if we go already for the exercise with the rapid assessment tool, because Andres will really bring it into using the rapid assessment tool. But maybe we can first have a small Q&A session to respond to any burning question we have. And I also welcome, because I see in the group of colleagues being here this afternoon, some of you have used already these tools in your country. You know very well, and it will be also interesting in this open discussion that you share the challenges, and you also share the shortcomings you found on these tools, and whether it was helpful or it ended up in a complete disaster to guide any policy decision. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Celine. Okay, I already see someone raising his hand, so go ahead, Bob.
Yes, thank you so much, Ramos and Peron, for this elaborate presentation. Bob Mchawewa from UNICEF Eastern and Southern Africa Regional Office. I'm interested in your first slide on the social policy environment. And when I followed the steps, there are two issues that I want to just clarify with you. Number one is the poverty assessment. Why is it coming midway? Should that not be coming first to then guide the discussion on coverage and then the costing? but it's midway in the flow of in your presentation. So maybe just want to check with that. And then the second question I'm interested in checking with you is there is an emphasis on fiscal space analysis and financing options, which is basically a discussion about more money to social protection. Is it not about time we also broaden that step to include social protection expenditure processes? And I'm raising this because in many countries there are challenges with parallel cash transfer programs, development partners doing their things, government, international financial institutions. So there's so many things happening, inefficiencies in expenditures, registry is not robust enough. So the point I want to make is, should we not be considering broadening the fiscal space dialogue to include social protection, financing, and expenditures? So we go beyond more money to social protection. But this is extremely useful, and I must say we do make reference to the web link, the Interagency Social Protection Assessment 2 web that Aristide has just posted there. Very useful results, and I must say, so thank you so much for that, and looking forward to this process. Back to you. Over.
Amparo, I don't know if there's any more hands up, but maybe I can already respond to Bob's question. Yeah. Now, thank you very much, Bob, for these two questions. And then I realized that for the first one on poverty assessment, I probably went too fast, trying to catch up on the time. To mention that there are two levels of poverty assessment, and you're completely right to emphasize the importance of conducting a poverty assessment and social protection needs early in the process, and that will be done under the identification of gaps, maybe the step number 2. In order to identify the gaps, we need to also understand what is the poverty situation in the country. And this is where we need to conduct this poverty assessment to be able to identify where and for which population we need to reinforce social protection. And that your point, and thank you very much for raising it, it's extremely important, because otherwise we cannot build recommendation if we don't know what are the needs and what is the poverty situation in the country. The poverty assessment that I've included in number 4 in my slide, it's a second poverty assessment that we will conduct through this process, is looking at the impact on poverty of one or the other option or scenarios that will be adopted, which come as a simulation exercise rather than assessing the current situation, but more simulating the impact on poverty of the different scenarios that we will include in the definition of social protection or in this objective of achieving universal social protection. So this is more a simulation exercise, which is a very important information to decide on which priorities we will keep. And when we conduct this exercise, there's also a discussion, and I didn't enter into details because it will be discussed when during session 5 and 6, I think. How do we set priorities? It doesn't mean that we will drop certain of the recommendation or certain of the program that are nevertheless very needed. It just means that in view of the fiscal space available for social protection and the possibility of expanding this fiscal space, there's then a discussion to progressively introduce all this recommendation. So then you develop with the Ministry of Finance and the different ministries in charge of social protection a plan to introduce gradually these different scenarios and recommendations that we will cost, that you cost through this exercise, because not everything will be achievable during the first fiscal year, for example, or during the first 5 years. So this is where it's important to work with projection, and this is what also Andres will show us now, to be able to come with a plan to progressively achieve universal social protection, because it will probably not be possible in low or lower middle income country to introduce everything at once. But you need to discuss with the stakeholders and which one will come first and which one we keep for the next generation, that needs to already be agreed in a plan that needs to be endorsed by all ministries and development partners, to make sure that this doesn't only stay as a report, but then has also an institutional anchorage for the implementation. And all of this you will discuss then. Your question on the different financing option and looking at efficiency of budget, I didn't enter in this discussion because it will be what you will discuss in the next session of this course with our experts on public finance, and also with our colleagues from UNICEF headquarters, who will also enter into this discussion in the next session. Thank you very much.
Musa, I think, wanted to say something, and I think now Aristide too. Musa first.
Okay, thank you, Alvaro. Thank you, Celine, for this big presentation. Just want to share some back experience with the sport tools that we run between 2019 and 2010-20 with Celine direction. Under setting direction, but we learned a lot about this tool and how we can better maybe fine-tune this or apply this. First of the experiences we learned is about the scope of the diagnostic. You know, as you know, the social protection is a multi-sectorial sectors. You have many ministry involved in social protection area. And the scope of the diagnostic is a huge element. How we define the limit of the social protection program, we will include in the diagnostic. And you see how the ministry bargain and discuss to how to fix the scope. This is the first challenge, I think. The second is how we can adapt to the tools. For instance, if we take the CODI, the core diagnostic instrument, you have at least more than 400 questions. You cannot apply all the questionnaire. You need to choose some question and who are very relevant for your situation in your country, and you need to make some some changes, adaptation of the tools. Third is the social dialogues. You need to mobilize in several workshops. You have a big back and forth process to validate all the phases or the steps. When you run the diagnostic, you have the gap, and when you want to turn the gap into scenarios, you have to discuss a bit around maybe 4 or 6 workshops discussing what will be the high scenario, what will be the low scenario. Did we need to have a medium scenario, or a high-low or a low-high? Extra. It's very complicated, and it's take many time. It's very time consuming, and you need to think about the process. We need to take this time also to involve people and to get them and allowing them to endorse the final recommendation. The last point I want to share is during the fiscal space analysis or the financing option, how we conduct also a poverty analysis. You need between their two phases to also have a advocacy policy or advocacy document. Fiscal space is one thing, and we need to bring evidence to the policymaker and how we can have the return on investment if we put such money in social protection. We will have some impact in poverty, maybe in growth of revenue, in equity in the population, better lives and schools, extra. But based on what we plan, what we found in the scenarios, and what we found in the fiscal space, this is the process that we can conduct simultaneously to get also in fine the advocacy line for the policy make. Okay, this is the last point I want to share. I beg your pardon for my English. If it's not clear, Celine can come again for explain. Thank you.
Musa, no, your English was absolutely perfect. And thank you so much for sharing all these difficulties that we faced when conducting this sport exercise that really reinforced the point of the time needed to reach consensus on each step of the exercise. Now, thanks a lot, Musa, for sharing this concrete experience. Thanks.
Aristide, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you, Alvaro, and thank you, Celine. So maybe very quickly, and thanks, Celine, for the presentation. That was great. I know we had opportunities to discuss about some parts of the tools, and I wanted to come back on Bob's point. And before I start, I wanted to say that, of course, Bob, you asked a question, but I consider you as a resource person for the coming works that we are planning to undertake under this program on social protection financing, especially, and also on the ISPA, etc. So if you didn't know Bob, you will get to know him in the coming weeks when we start working on those things. So to come back on what Bob has said, and it was also my question, I don't know if we have tools and methodologies to assess who needs what and where, right? That's something. Despite we can assess the poverty situation, etc., do we have tools to know who in the society needs what kind of social protection coverage, and where are those persons, etc.? And then I think this is the basis to understand, to know the gaps, right? Because we can assess the system, what is there, etc. But if we don't put it vis-a-vis with some needs, specific needs, it's a bit it's a bit tricky. And I'm currently faced with the situation in some country where it's not an easy piece of work, right? To understand what we should do to cover what. So it's easy to assess what is there, but the situation, we don't know the situation extensively. And then another question is, what is the capacity of the government to meet the needs? It comes to public finance management. So we can basically know what are the needs, what's the coverage, what's the gap. We can cost the necessary actions to close the gap. But we are facing now the situation of the budget constraint of the government, right? And then we want to answer the following question: where do we start, right? So this, I think, I'm not sure we can talk about tools. We might be talking about national dialogues, as you said, Celine, and then it's sitting down with the national actors and discussing about where we can start with the money we have, with the government constraints, etc., and how to progressively cover the needs. So that's my points.
And maybe Alvaro, I can start answering to the question. Thanks, Aristide, for the question, and thank you, Bob, also for joining this training and being part of it during the coming weeks. It will be very interesting indeed to hear about your concrete experience and knowledge about this topic. Really looking forward to it. Yeah, Aristide, on your specific question, and do we have a tool to assess what we need, and who do we need to cover for what need? I think what is important when we conduct this kind of overall review is to have in mind the approach of social protection, that we want to give it a life cycle approach. So in fact, the needs are very changing, and they may depend on which moment of your life you are. If you're children, working age, elderly, people with disability, and we want this social protection to really adopt this life cycle approach to ensure that for everyone in the country, we can ensure this protection throughout the life cycle. And this is really, this life cycle approach, this is really something that we have seen embedded in many of the national social protection strategies in many of the countries. So the identification of the need at a certain time may not bring the full picture of the social protection needs, because those needs keeps evolving across the life cycle. And the other point that I've started mentioning is really to work towards achieving universal social protection. That is extremely important, that everybody is in need of social protection. And even if it was not that clear for everyone before the COVID pandemic, I think the COVID pandemic was really a wake-up call to see that whatever is your situation today, tomorrow you may be in need of social protection, and you need this protection to be as comprehensive as possible, because with this changing world, the pandemic was one risk, the climate change, we are facing more and more risks. And it's not because you have a job today that you will have a job tomorrow. It's not because today you can sustain your family that you will be able to sustain your family. And in the core of this discussion was also the large response that was deployed in response to the COVID to support the informal economy, that are mostly those not yet covered by any social protection program, not part of the system, and those who were really severely hit by the crisis and in need, because neither covered by the non-contributory scheme, social assistance, nor by the social insurance. We will have more opportunities throughout the course to really discuss this. And thanks a lot, Aristide, for the very interesting question. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Celine, for your time and the question and answer. Very interesting, all the comments. Now we'd like to introduce Andres, right? Andres, hello.
Yes, still Andres.
Hi, Andres. So Andres Acuña is working for the Department of Social Protection in the PFAC unit, and he has been developing more advanced or more easily accessible version of the ILO RAP tool. So I'll let him introduce it. Thank you, Andres, for your time.
Okay, hello everybody. I think that I know some people in the audience, so very nice to see that you are okay. So basically, I hope that you're the lucky group, because the things that I did in the morning, and I think that I can improve, I will improve it now. So hopefully this will be a better presentation than the one in the morning. Basically, I will start by saying the RAP that I am going to present you will allow you to assess the gaps in coverage, adequacy, and financing of the current system, and to propose solutions and find the cost of these potential solutions towards these gaps that you assess. So before showing you anything, I have to say that Why is this important? Because that gives you credibility. If you say that there is a problem, but you don't say that what is this way you plan to or propose to find a solution, you are not coming to a dialogue. You are basically coming to, it's kind of a medical consultation, it's one-sided. If you come with a solution, even if later you have to negotiate, you are coming in a different standard. You have more strength, it's more credible. So this is what we would like you to be there. So before showing anything to you, I would like to ask you, any of you have worked with the previous RAP, the one in Excel? If so, please raise your hands. So Musa, Celine, okay, we have some people. So, okay, so basically, I would like to point out that even if it is a tool that have worked very well for some people, for me, it's a tool that have already over time. It's complicated. To understand a model, you have to go step by step, looking by every cell. Is not team friendly. So if you share it with somebody, the rest of the people don't know what you are doing. You have to review everything. So it takes a big learning process for something that is not flexible, that actually ask you for information that that later you won't use. So for me, this tool had its moment, and I think that we have to say thank you and move to something else. So our proposal for something else is here. So if everybody can see my screen, we are in the quantitative platform for social security. So here we have two actuarial models that we want work on today, and we have the SSI online and the RAP. So if we go to the RAP, you will notice that is email password protected. So if you are working in a team as a team in the country, everybody receive a password. Everybody can enter the same working space and see what other people have done and do some extra work by themselves. So the work that you do is public for the people in your team. And hopefully the team will be your country. So in this way, if you have a proposal, the people could review it, could challenge your assumptions, could propose another modifications. So we are in a very transparent and very transparent and suite for entitlement. For really, you can feel the property of your work, and other people can also accompany in your work. So just to show you, when we come here, we have two very important friends. One is the model and one is the scenario. So the model shows you what is the current situation and tells you what are the gaps. The scenario is a proposal for solving the model. It's a proposal to reduce the gaps that you assess in the model. So I will view the model just to show you that have mainly general information at the step, the GDP, the government expenditure, the base year, how many years in the past you want to give, and you can have the opportunity to fill this information with a description. The second step is you choose among the list of available benefits, and you select the ones that are present in your model right now. So the benefits that are here exist in certain way, but they are not being paid right now. The ones here are the ones that are being paid. So for every one of these benefits, you can relate to population groups. You can have population groups covered by more than one benefit. You can have benefits covered in more than one population group, and so on. So for each one of the benefits, we could see the initial situation, the situation in the base year. So you can modify this maybe later. And later we have a quantitative abstract of the information that we have seen. Later we can have qualitative assessments, so we can have qualitative comments on the current benefits. Just because not everything is related to quantitative. Sometimes we feel that there is some qualitative gaps in the provision of benefits, and we mentioned them there. Following this, we have the information about the national population and the labor force per single age, but this could be adjusted. We have here the gaps. This is the percentage, the population that is not covered. This is the population, how much this population is respective to the objective or aim population that we have. Here we have the adequacy gap. So the portion of benefit that we are missing, comparison to the total, to the threshold, sorry for this, and the absolute financing gap in comparison to the GDP. We have a matrix preview, and here we can move towards the scenarios. So as I mentioned before, a scenario is a solution for this problem. So if we have more than one model, we can have different scenarios from different models. If we view this scenario, if we don't have much thing, but much to see, but if we go here, we have the dashboard where we have inputs and outputs. As outputs, the most important one are the results where we have the different reports that are quite extensive. We can have by warranty, by population group, by benefit. We can have information on existing benefits, including the gaps, the covered population. So inputs and outputs, estimation of existing gap, financial projection, all of that you could access through this. But what is more important, you can change it. You can edit this, and especially by creating new population groups and by creating new benefits. So population groups are sets of people that are in need of protection. So this brings us to the question that is from Aristide. Who's in need of protection? We can define it here, and we define it if we view here with a name, a reference population that could be the total population of the labor force. We have a beneficiary unit that could be individual or households, because sometimes we are not covering individual characteristics, but household characteristics. We have, if there is individuals, we have different initial and final ages and eligibility criteria. For example, if we go here, this one is households, where we have eligibility criteria, reference population, and so on. So besides that, we have benefits. Benefits are not per se connected to population groups in this stage. They are connected to population groups in the model part. So if we view the benefit, we have a name, a year of creation. We relate them to some social protection floor warranty function or component. And we can have different financing sources and the whole administrative part where we have the administrative institution, the responsible body, the description, and the legal framework for the benefit. So later we have here again, models are or initial situation, scenarios, or proposed solution. Everything that we see here everything that we see here is accessible to the people, is easy to export to Excel, and everything can be challenged. So if you consider that some assumptions, for example, for the projection period, here we have assumptions. If you consider that this assumption is not of your liking, is too optimistic or is too pessimistic, you can comment on it. Because why? Because you can see it. You can see it clearly, and we can do something about it. So all of this is an opportunity for dialogue, already starting in the technical phase. So I think that I would like to stop here and open the floor for questions. And if somebody wants to stay later, we can even play a little with the model all together. So thank you.
Thank you, Andres, for the presentation. Are there any questions?
Sorry, I didn't raise my hand, but I'm happy to, if Andres is offering to have a demonstration, I'm happy to take it and see how it is, because I had an experience with the Excel one, and now I'm seeing a nice platform. So I'm happy to see how it works.
Okay, so let's see a moment. Let's play a little, and I think that maybe. Okay, maybe we can answer first the question that have been raised in the chat. I think that is an important question, or at least start up as a very important question, and I think that continue to be good. So the data normally will come from National Statistics Office, plenty of it, National Bank, a good part of it, and sometimes we need to go to some population statistics and sometimes some poverty statistics. It depends on the designs that you are using. And normally for the projection period, everything is assumptions. So assumptions are, we need to be anchored in the past and a good grasp of what could happen in the future. But assumptions is a problem because it's what you like as an assumption, maybe I don't like it. So, but I hope this answers your question, Cohen. So basically, Aristide, I would like you, do you see the population groups that I am showing?
Yes.
Yeah. Do you find any population group that maybe is missing that you would like to mention?
No, I think we can go with that. I see
Oh.
under 2 preschool, it's 2 to 4, primary 5 to 11, secondary, it's okay.
Oh yeah. I don't know because I actually have the feeling that maybe we are missing long-term unemployed. That are part of the labor force, no?
Yeah.
Yes, these people normally between ages let's 15 to 65. And what is the characteristic of this people, the eligibility criteria? Okay, long-term unemployment. So, and let's say that we see that 0.02 and 0.03 of the population in the base year are facing this problem. So with that, we have already a new group. And we can still add groups if we want, or modify the ones that are existing. And we can create benefits. So let's say that we are rolling with this one. So maybe we have a employment care for unemployment care that is maybe a new scheme that we are just going to create, and is for working age, unemployment, working age, is in cash, is a temporary benefit, and we have to put names. So unemployment 100, we are financing by taxes, or
What are the options?
Oh, the options. We have taxes, we have contributions, external, that means government aid, external government, or mixed.
Okay, great.
I will go for mixed because actually we don't know yet. So the administrative institution is 100 on 100 bank. I am just making this in this time, so sorry if something Minister of Labor. We can have here a description. Actually, we have plenty of space for putting a description of everything, and we can here refer to the law that we're using. So I will show you something very quickly. That is, okay, we have this scenario here, and here I can add benefits. So this benefit that I just created, I can add it to the benefit that are already included into the model. So from the following year on, we will have this. So let's say it's a 10,000 threshold. Like this will be the ideal benefit, but we have only for 7,000. And we can select the population group receiving it. And I will complete this. So when I do this, I can open here, and I will discover that the existing benefits that we will have a new existing benefit. With a probability of the target top population appearing, and the initial cover population of 0. And actually, if I want to go for the future, I could fill the data here. Oh, it's already filled. That is great. And start to make coverage of this. So I can do checkout, and I would say that we are going to have 10% coverage from here. And here I will have, oh, maybe this is too low. So we are just playing a little with this. So the long-term employment, I think that we will keep the same probabilities of happening. And if we go to the dashboard and calculate, we can come here, open, and maybe we can go for the gaps information. So unemployment care, we have here the coverage gap that is, it starts by 100% and goes here, and we can have here the gap and the cost of the benefit, and how much it costs in terms of the GDP. So what we can see is that as of now, the per capita expenditure is missing. So we can work it out, but everything that you need is there. You would see, you can play with this. If in otherwise you have that the unemployment is already existing, you can add it by copying and editing an existing model. So in that case, you can add it already from year 0. So this is a very quick way of work it. So okay, in the case of Musa, this works with eligibility criteria given in percentage of the reference population. So the number of months of inactivity that you are mentioned, you will need to estimate the probability of achieving this many months of inactivity. So what we need to do with this, basically look at statistics, look at past statistics. So for example, if you want to see how many people last more than 8 months of inactivity, you will need to check the information available, and hopefully the way that is that you can have something like that. So that's always the problem. Sometimes you could have things that you would like to use, but the information is not available for your country. Anyway, the tool lets you play with information that you have, and makes this information available and easy to use to plenty of people, because for example, you could enter the same platform, copy the scenario, and try to find things that are more of your liking, and later we can discuss, but everybody looking the same transparent information. And one important thing, it always follows the same rules. It always follows the same formulas. It always follows the same process. So what I was mentioning before, Excel was a tool where you have to see every cell to notice what the people were thinking. Here you have to be transparent on putting what are your assumptions. So everything gets easier, because Excel, we would like it to say that was one only model, but I think that it was a model for every user. It was the kind of the recipe for soup. In every household, you have a different recipe for soup. So every user have a different recipe for a wrap. And this was not the best idea. So I prefer this one that every time you will follow the same steps. I think that maybe we don't have time to go for every possibility. We are working in a manual. We are working in ways to make this tool more easier to work in. So we are working in preparing the graphical interface where the tool will prepare charts about the total expenditure, the coverage, and all of this, but they are not ready yet. It's a living tool. Will be even a more interesting tool when all of you will be working on it, because that's another part with the actuarial tools and with this tool. we are really interested to hear the users, and if they have some recommendations, probably we can do some changes for special situations that could be repeated in different places. And the great thing is that if we do one change for one country, it applies to everybody. If you find a way to improve the tool, if you do it in Excel, you tweak Excel and you have an improvement. Here, if you find a way to improve it, we change the programming, and everybody in the world that is working with this can can see the improvement and work it. So I think that I said enough. So thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much, Andres. I think we are all very impressed with the tool. I'm sure now all the participants are aware that this modernized, the improved tool exists, and there will be a lot of interest in when the manual is available and when everybody can use the tool. And I understood that the tool will have graphs too, right? Like certain graph will be easier to make in the tool eventually.
Yes, certain very easy charts, but don't worry, because the tool is easily connected to Excel. So we are not limiting the creativity of anybody with the charts. If you find that the charts of the tool are not up to your standard, export it to Excel, prepare new charts, and please share it with us, because if we find nice work done with the tool, we can try to share it with everybody.
Okay. Thank you so much, Andre. I think we are a bit over time for everybody, but I appreciate that you all remain logged in until now. Thank you so much. I don't know if Celine would like to give a few concluding words.
No, I mean, thanks a lot for all your interesting questions. We would always like to have more time to look at that and also be on presential training, but we're doing as best as we can, and see you next Monday, no, Alvaro, or Tuesday? Monday.
Monday.
Next Monday, same time. No, next Monday, different time. Maybe you can...
Yes, next Monday time, because it is the joint session. So you have to be careful. I will send all of you a reminder. Don't worry. I will also send you a little exercise. It is not something you have to hand in, but it is more so that you can start building the country case and not have accumulate a lot of work for the end, but so that you can keep applying what we have been seeing these two sessions. So I will send that later tonight. Okay, so thank you very much for everybody, and I hope to see you, all of you, on the joint session next Monday. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everybody.
Bye.